All right, let's start with Russ Vought. Russ Vought, who my colleague at the Washington Post, Jeff Stein, has, I believe it's on Twitter, just pointed out all these things about Russ Vought, notably asserted presidential authorities to unilaterally claw back spending without Congress, said, quote, "We are living in a post-constitutional time." Aggressive proponent of using Schedule F to strip protections from much of the federal workforce. And you can see the rest there on the screen. But are you concerned about Vaught's ties to Project 2025?
Yeah, we said it all along, that this was Donald Trump's 2025. He tried to, and lied. He does that often. You know, he's still a con man, even though he's the president-elect. He said he had nothing to do with it. Yet you see Vought, as you will see others who were instrumental in putting Project 2025 together, being a part of his administration. Again, Jonathan, because they were there before. And that's why it is so dangerous now. They were there before, but they had some guardrails, and now they think that they figured out how to get rid of those guardrails so that they can empower Donald Trump so that he is not like a president of the United States, but they would like him to be like a Vladimir Putin.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things I didn't read that my Jeff Stein put it there, up there, put it back up on the screen, that Russ Vought has crafted plans for Trump to deploy the military to quash civil unrest and seize more control over the Justice Department. Deploying the military to quash civil unrest, that's something that Pete Hegseth, thanks to Jonathan Chait at The Atlantic, having read, all of his books, that's something that the defense secretary pick that Trump has given us, Pete Hegseth, he's down for that too. How concerned are you that people are being put in place who are going to do things that are unconstitutional, but also un-American?
Well, that's because those individuals that Donald Trump chooses, he doesn't want those that pledge themselves to the United States of America. He wants those that pledge themselves to Donald J. Trump. And that's where the danger really goes in. He wants loyalists. He's picked no one really based upon their experience. The only thing that he looks at when they give his resume is, will you be loyal to me? Mm-hmm. And so you have to question what anybody that he's put in place, because everyone that he's put in place has had a role previously with him. And as he says, I mean, he doesn't hide it. He says the most important thing to him and whoever he picks is loyalty, not to the United States of America, but to Donald Trump. And that's a dangerous situation. Why? Who else looks to want to have people that's loyal? Does Vladimir Putin like people to be loyal to him? You know what happens to them? If they don't go with him, he do go after them. In fact, many of them fall out of windows at times.
I was about to say, off balconies and things.
Orban, who visited him down in Mar-a-Lago, go check out what's happening there. His best friend who he had a bromance with, Kim Jong-un. What happens in North Korea? These are the people that he's associated himself with, and this is what he admires. I gotta
get you on two more things. One, we played the long clip of Nikki Haley talking smack about Tulsi Gabbard. Did Nikki Haley say anything wrong or untrue about Tulsi Gabbard?
She said exactly right. That's why I am puzzled. She endorsed Donald Trump. And as you've correctly stated, she helped put him there because she could have taken the position that everyone that was close to Donald Trump that had pledged allegiance to the United States, General Kelly, General Milley, they took umbrage with Donald Trump, the former vice president, his former defense secretary. All of them did not endorse Donald Trump in this last election. Nikki Haley could have done the same thing. So to talk about it now when it's too late seems to me a little bit hypocritical.
Mm-hmm. And let me have you put on your House Financial Services Committee hat. Your thoughts on Scott Bessent being chosen by Trump as his choice for Treasury Secretary?
Unfortunately, when you look at this and you compare some of these other places, on paper, he would seem as though he is a more reasonable person. But he would then have to carry out, and will he stand up to Donald Trump when Donald Trump says he's going to put 10% tariffs on all of our allies and everyone else, and almost 70% tariffs on China And what will that do with reference to inflation and other things? Is he going to carry out that agenda? Or is he going to come to something that is much more reasonable? Because if you talk to any economist, conservative or liberal, they will tell you that what he, has said, Donald Trump, is inflationary. Mm-hmm. And so what will this guy do? Is he going to just follow? Because Donald has said, if you don't do what I tell you to do, he won't last long. He'll be fired. He'll be gone.
Right. One more question for you before I have to let you. What do you think Trump's second term is going to look like for House Democrats?
Well, look, we have now more seats than we had last time. We had 212. We had 213 now. We have 3 seats that are yet to be that's yet to be decided. We could be at 215, looking at the numbers right now, which means that the Republicans in the House will only have 1 vote. So they couldn't govern then. They couldn't govern in the 118th Congress. How do you expect them to govern in the 119th Congress? So often in the 118th Congress, the de facto speaker to get anything done was Hakeem Jeffries. So what's going to happen in the 119th Congress? They will not function. It's going to take them to working with us if they want to get anything done. And I think that what I can guarantee you, Jonathan, we will be taking it straight to the American people so that they can look and evaluate what's going on in their lives as a result of the election of Donald J. Trump and the election by keeping the House in the majority of the Republicans.
See what I'm doing here?
Eating popcorn.
Come on. Exactly it. Congressman Gregory Meeks, the great state of New York. Thank you very much for coming to the last word. Good to be with you.